We're going to start this hearing.
Yeah, but you can't, yeah. Mostly I took chancy. And
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I am City Manager, and I serve Wake County. Just wanted to say thank you so much to the public who took time out of their very busy lives to attend this hearing. Thank you to the journalists who have shown up to cover the real-life experience of North Carolinians who have been negatively impacted by the failure of this legislature to pass a budget. Your reporting is helping to shine a light on the people and communities impacted every single day of the action in this life. And most importantly, they feature our speakers and fellow North Carolinians who came here today to share their testimony. Your courage and honesty in defense of the people of our great state is what we're here. Is what this hearing is all about. We thank you for everything that you have sacrificed today to be here with us, because many of you traveled quite the distance. I also want to recognize and thank my fellow Senate Democratic colleagues for showing up today for the hearing and for your continued work to govern, even when others in this building refuse to do so. We invite all members, all 50 members of the North Carolina Senate, to participate today in hopes of having a bipartisan hearing. After all, my fellow Democratic colleagues represent roughly 4 million North Carolinians, and our Republican colleagues represent the remaining 7 million. However, 6 of our members were not able to be here today, and none of our Republican colleagues chose to participate in this hearing despite receiving the invitation. Our caucus firmly believes that it is incumbent upon every legislator in this building to care about North Carolinians, not just those who live in our districts, because after all, our state is successful because of the Christmas tree farmers out west to the fishermen on the coast and all North Carolinians in between. We hope that all Senate members, of course, will be here, but I thank my Senate colleagues who showed up today. As we sit here, we are now nearly 5 months past the date when our state budget was due. For more than 142 days, the North Carolina General Assembly has failed to do its most basic and fundamental responsibility, which is to pass the state budget. The last time that the North Carolina General Assembly passed the state budget, President Joe Biden was still about 14 months left in his term, and since then, prices at the grocery stores have increased, our insurance premiums continue to rise, and the cost of living is only increased. Yet state spending remains stagnant. That failure has already been devastating for many people within our state, and the consequences in our communities get worse with every day that passes. As legislators, we constantly hear from concerned constituents through email, phone, and in person. We hear from parents who can't afford child care, from teachers and public workers still waiting for their promised raises, from medical providers unsure how they will continue to provide the life-saving care that they need for their patients, and from rural communities left without the necessary resources needed to grow and attract good-paying jobs to their towns. As elected leaders, our duty first and foremost is to serve the people of this state, not to play political games with their lives and their future. Too often, with a 24-hour news cycle and people's decreasing attention span, the true impact of this state's failure to pass a budget largely goes unnoticed. But today, and in this moment, this hearing is about elevating the voices of the people being harmed by this budget crisis and bringing their experiences directly into this legislative building. Here's how today's hearing will work. We've divided the conversation into 6 key sections: the cost of living, education, healthcare, mental health, veterans, and rural communities. Each topic will be introduced by a senator who will be leading on that issue. We will then hear testimony from North Carolinians directly impacted by the lack of a budget, followed by questions and discussions from additional senators. Today, you'll hear from educators, parents, working families, and rural residents, providers in North Carolina, and providers in all North Carolinians struggling just to get by. They came from across the state to be here today because they believe in the promise of North Carolina and what it could be if we had a government that worked for them. North Carolina has real challenges, but we also have people
who are ready to and are continuing to build solutions every single day in our classrooms, clinics, farms, and communities. North Carolinians aren't asking for a handout. We are not strangers to hard work. And that very strength is etched in our state toast, where it reads, "Here's to the land of the long leaf pine, the summer land where the sun doth shine, where the weak grow strong and the strong grow great." Their sweat, equity, and contributions is what makes this great state an amazing place to live and to raise a family. And what they deserve, at the very least, is a government that will show up and do its job. And after all, that's the least that we can do, and frankly, what we were actually elected to do. Today and every day, my fellow colleagues fight for them and fight for you. That's why this hearing matters. And that's why we are so grateful for each and every one of you to be here today. And so to begin today's hearing and to help us understand how this crisis is affecting families at the most basic levels, which is the ability for us to eat and survive and thrive, we're joined today by someone on the front lines of this crisis. Barkley Sample serves as the Regional Director for Catholic Charities. Through food banks and faith-based outreach, Catholic Charities supports thousands of families across North Carolina who are struggling with hunger and housing insecurity. Mr. Sample has seen firsthand how the rising costs of living and inaction at the state level are straining the very systems meant to provide relief. Mr. Sample, thank you for being here today, and we welcome your testimony.
There we go. Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Barkley Sample. I am the Director of Food Pantry Services, my other title, for Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Raleigh. Catholic Charities has provided food pantry services in Central and Eastern North Carolina for over 45 years. We serve 45 counties in Central and Eastern North Carolina through 6 brick-and-mortar food pantries in urban areas and 14 mobile pantries, providing access to healthy and nutritious food in more remote areas. Last year, we served over 282,000 neighbors and distributed more than 6 million pounds of food. The most urgent challenge we face is a sharp rise in demand. Since the last biennial budget was approved, our food distribution has grown by 50% to keep pace with the increased pantry visits. In the 4 months following that budget period, demand accelerated further, with 33% more families served across our footprint. The Tar River region has seen a 75% surge, and the Cape Fear region has experienced a 163% increase. Make no mistake, we are in a food insecurity crisis. Children and 1 in 7 people are food insecure in North Carolina. As much as we have tried to grow, nonprofits cannot shoulder this burden alone. Our budgets are already stretched thin, and donations are not scalable to fill the gaps left by North Carolina not having a state budget that addresses the food needs of our neighbors. Life is getting more expensive, and the low-income families that we serve are feeling that strain the most. Grocery prices are rising, healthcare costs and coverage are uncertain, including eligibility for Medicaid and the loss of subsidies for Affordable Care Act premiums. Childcare has been unaffordable and is frequently unavailable. Rent and utilities continue to increase while wages remain stagnant. Low-income families are also experiencing the loss of vital services that extra boost for families to survive. The loss of funding streams such as the Emergency Food and Shelter Program and reduction in the Emergency Food Assistance Program have been major blows to vital lifelines for families. The lack of a state budget has taken away much of the opportunity to prosper that North Carolinians need. Those dramatic increases I pointed out in Cape Fear and Tar River regions reflect the end of the Healthy Opportunities Pilot Program. This has been a setback in the fight against food insecurity. As I conclude, I would like to share a few individual stories from the HOP program with 3 quotes from our HOP recipients. Number 1, before HOP, I skipped meals so that my kids could eat. Now I no longer have to go to bed hungry. Thanks to HOP, my health has stabilized, and I don't have to stress about affording nutritious food. This program has saved my family, giving us the support we desperately needed during hard times. As a state, our strength lies in providing opportunities for all residents to thrive, and the commitment reflects the purpose of HOP. Moving away from a reactive approach, helping families after they get sick, to proactively working to prevent those increased health expenses from rising. HOP improves the quality of life for its recipients. And this is beyond a human issue. It's also an economic issue. HOP supported local farmers, local grocers, and created local jobs. As you continue your work in this chamber, I humbly request that you move with urgency to enact a new state budget to provide the resources needed for our state to succeed. And in that budget framework, please reconsider inclusion of HOP funding. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sample, for your powerful testimony and bringing real life experiences to how families are really suffering every single day. And so I'll start off with my first question, which is, can you share what you're seeing firsthand on the ground of working families who are struggling right now just to put enough food on their children's table and some of the sacrifices that they've had to make?
We've seen, especially most recently in the last 4 months, a surge in first-time families coming to us, working families. There's an expression that our Raleigh pantry director uses as people have more month than money. So even folks that are getting assistance, people that are on SNAP, are still coming to us at the end of the month because there's still that gap there and they need that supplemented as well. But again, we're seeing a lot of first-time families, a lot of new faces. We're also seeing a trend in larger households as households start to collapse and they're multi-generational households. So there may be 2 or 3 generations living together.
Thank you, Mr. Sample. My name is Michael Garrett, and I represent Guilford County. And I just want to thank you first for being here today and echo Leader Batch's words. You know, we raise our children, that one of our core values in our family is service to others, and you and your organization live that day after day. And you're not just sitting on the sidelines watching what's happening to our state and to our families. You and your organization are responding to it day by day, family by family. And I just want to echo her words and say my deep gratitude for helping out our neighbors.
Thank you.
I'm interested to hear if you could describe more about how demand has changed on your organization and to the food banks across North Carolina over the past year or two.
I would say that demand has changed and again, the types of families that we're seeing. We're seeing, I mean, we've always served working families, and I know there's this myth out there that people that are on SNAP or that use food banks or food pantries or people that don't work and they don't want to work and they stay home. Nothing could be further from the truth. These are all working families. Unfortunately, they're working at a level where they're in more menial labor jobs, or lower income jobs where they just their wages have not only have they not kept pace with inflation, but they have not kept pace with the wages of middle class and upper class folks as well. So when you see some areas maybe getting a 3-4% raise, these jobs are staying stagnant or getting a 1 or 2% increase. So, and those increases just aren't keeping pace with costs that they incur.
Yes, thank you for the work that you're doing and the work that you're doing in the faith community. One of the things that I would be curious to note, because our church does some sharing of food and works with various food banks, one of the first things I began to notice was the cars that I would see in the parking lot have changed. They're remarkably better, but people that are driving those cars are doing remarkably worse. But in the last 5 years or so, what are some of the changes you have seen as it relates to SNAP benefits and so on?
Well, SNAP benefits also have not kept up with the pace of inflation. And I'm sure, as you know, but most of the general public doesn't because they're living their lives from day to day. One of the things that not only are we seeing today, but we're going to see starting October of 26, when the legislation that was passed this summer kicks in, there's a 17% reduction in SNAP benefits built into that. So the folks that are struggling to get by as it is today with SNAP are going to see that benefit be greatly reduced going forward in FY27 fiscal year.
Follow up. How important is it for the nonprofit sector to be involved in helping these insecurities?
We definitely play a vital role in that, but we can't do that alone. I mean, we need support, whether that's federal support, whether that's state support. We certainly can't fill the gap that's been created. I mean, our numbers have ramped up, and as an organization, Catholic Charities, we're hanging in there, but our budget was built this year with the expectation that HOP was going to be a part of it. So we've had to make some adjustments on the fly, and unfortunately, we've had to let some folks go because of that lack of HOP funding. But again, our goal and our mantra is we're going to serve everybody that comes to our door. Right now, that's in every area except one, we've been able to maintain the level of food that we've been distributing. But part of that's been, we've tapped into reserves a little bit to do that. And in one area in particular where we're struggling, we're still serving the same number of people or more, but we've actually been forced to give them less food than we previously had or that we would want to as well. So eventually, we just can't sustain the pace that we're at right now.
Thank you so very much for your testimony and for all the work that you're doing. For those of you who don't know, that usually the food bank gets non-recurring dollars in our state budget, and because we don't have one, they are going without and relying on the community to bring food to them. So for those individuals who can still give and have the ability to give, I'd ask that you reach out to the Food Bank of Central North Carolina and assist. The failure is not is on this building. It is not obviously on the people of North Carolina, but because we know that North Carolinians have a great amount of humanity in them, I know, and I thank them for continuing to work with you through this crisis. Thank you so much.
And the Food Bank is our biggest supplier of food, along with Interfaith Food Shuttle. So both of those are two vital partners for us.
Yeah, so Interfaith Food Shelter and any other place that actually gives donations. And I'm so sorry, my colleague Senator Garrett wants to be acknowledged for another question before I let you go. My apologies, Mr. Sample. You shouldn't be so good at what you do.
It just came to me when you mentioned the one big bill, we'll just call it that. But since your organization is so intertwined in every corner of the state and trying to provide the very basics just for human survival, I'm really interested to hear what keeps you up at night.
Just not having enough food, honestly. That's, again, we've had, in one of our 6 pantries, we've had to make the hard decisions just to distribute less food to be able to continue to serve everybody in that particular region. But as I said, we've dipped into reserves already, which no organization really wants to do that. There's a reason why they are reserves. But it's a rainy day fund, and it's a rainy day right now. No, we just hopefully it'll be a shorter day, but it looks like it's going to be a longer day than any of us would like to see. So we're out there beating the bushes, applying for every grant that we can, looking at foundations, ramping up our individual donors. But it will be difficult to maintain the clip that we're maintaining now just through those sources.
And I believe, Senator Lowe, did you say you had a follow-up?
Yeah, I do have a follow-up because one of the things I'm curious about, if you had a budget, there would still be major challenges.
Yeah.
So has it just intensified, or is it, can you elaborate on that a little?
Well, part of what I alluded to, and I tried to keep this brief as possible to stay up to the timeline, but particularly in the Cape Fear Wilmington area, those were 2 of the 3 pilot areas for HOP. So those increased numbers that you're seeing with people that were HOP individuals, which are now being served by and so our budget that included HOP dollars to serve those people, those dollars weren't there. We're still serving that. Thank third to the Catholic Charities budget now, as opposed to utilizing options. Thank you. Thank you, sir. And Mr. City really that it here is in the life.
Thank you, Senator Batch. Here at Senator John's, but my state senator for Orange Person Casual Economies work with return to education match. What does it mean to be a teacher in North Carolina right now? It means showing up to classrooms filled with students carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders and doing everything in their power to help them succeed. It means digging into your own pocket to pay for the pencils the school can't afford. It means staying after hours with all of your counselors, assistants, and substitutes, principals, and never having enough people to go around for all of the needs that the children bring with them every day. It also means watching guaranteed rising healthcare costs while you sit here with no guarantee of a raise. And for too many teachers across the state, especially those in our rural counties, it's not knowing if their job will still be there next semester because local school boards are being forced to make staffing decisions without knowing what funding they'll actually get. North Carolina's teachers are navigating all of this while also carrying the weight of worrying about the children that they care about and care for every day. In some cases, they're the only stable adult in the child's life. And without the resources to meet basic needs like food or clothing, their responsibilities can quickly become overwhelming. Meanwhile, the legislature is still ignoring the court order from the Leander case mandating that our schools be fully funded. Failure to pass the state budget is not just some bureaucratic issue in Raleigh, it's a direct attack on the stability of our public schools and our collective future. It's hurting our teachers, our staff, and most of all, our students. Being a teacher is no small feat on any day, which is why today we are honored to be joined by Mary Jane Bowman, an elementary school teacher in rural North Carolina, Highway 2025 Person County Teacher of the Year. And Mary Jane Bowman will speak directly to what does uncertainty and delay means in real terms for her colleagues and for students. Thank you for being here and spoke to your welcome to that.
Good afternoon and thank you. Oh, yes. Good afternoon and thank you. I'm Mary Jane Bowman and I teach fourth grade in Person County. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about the impact that the lack of an approved budget is having on our schools. When the budget is not passed on time, it doesn't just delay numbers on a page. It affects real people, real classrooms, and real students. An approved budget is not a nice to have, it's a necessity. Because the budget remains stalled, teacher salary schedules are frozen. Educators who were expecting raises that help them keep up with the rising cost of living, were left without that increase in salary. This uncertainty makes it difficult for teachers to plan for their families, their homes, and their futures. In Person County, the effects are especially troubling. 53% of our teachers did not receive a raise this year. More than half of the professionals working with children every single day are working under the same pay they had before, despite growing responsibilities, ever-increasing expectations, and higher healthcare costs. This year, healthcare costs have increased dramatically for educators and staff across our district. For teachers with 6 or more years of experience, premiums have doubled, and in many cases, they are paying more for less coverage. These are educators who have committed years of their lives to serving students, yet they are being asked to shoulder an unfair financial burden just to maintain essential health care. During this year's enrollment plan, I had to make the decision to drop from the 80-20 plan to the 70-30 plan. Having the 80-20 plan would have made my share of the cost more than double. And teachers are not the only ones feeling the strain. Our non-certified staff, bus drivers, instructional assistants, cafeteria workers, custodians, office staff are also suffering significant losses in wages due to rising premiums. For these employees, take-home pay has decreased anywhere from $120 to $312 a year. These are also individuals who did not receive a raise and already work for modest wages. And losing this amount has an impact on their ability to meet basic needs. Our salaried and certified staff have also suffered the financial loss as well. Their take-home pay has dropped anywhere from $120 to $1,440 because of increased health care. And the consequences go beyond salary. Without an approved budget, funding for classroom materials, instructional support, professional development, and staffing remains unclear. Teachers continue to reach into their own pockets to provide basic supplies, all while navigating this financial uncertainty. It sends a painful message that the state is not prioritizing public education. When prospective teachers feel undervalued and unsupported, it becomes harder to recruit and retain qualified teachers. This challenge has far-reaching implications for student outcomes, school culture, and the overall quality of education. And ultimately, it is our students who feel this impact. Stable, well-supported teachers are essential to strong schools. This year in Carson County, we have 39 international teachers, which is 14% of our classroom teachers. These educators are highly qualified and appreciated, but this program typically allows these teachers to work for a limited time, often up to 3 years. Even teachers in North Carolina did not apply for these positions. I'm asking our leaders to understand the urgency. Our teachers deserve stability. They deserve competitive pay, and they deserve a budget that reflects the importance of the work they can do every single day. Thank you.
Ms. Bowman, thank you for coming today. And I'm sorry that you were having to take more out of pocket for your healthcare premiums. Will not take on more money. I appreciate that you are giving everything you can. I know you have not getting short less this year. Even though you're taking on less. I do want to ask you about how the damage that we do to teachers passed on to impact students. Recently, I was in Person Campus Schools at one of the middle schools, and I was stunned and sad how many students were taking online classes during the school day because they didn't have enough to eat. I saw my entire classroom of students sitting, looking at a giant TV screen with a teacher who was at the other school, the other middle school. I appreciated that she was willing to teach the students across town, but I just thought, what a terrible way to have to learn anything. And so I wonder if you can talk a little bit more with what you see of this failure to pass the budget directly impacting the student tickets.
Yeah, so of course, building relationships and the consistency that teachers supply for our students is important. And so a teacher who remains at a school and in a community builds those relationships with students and with families and can meet the needs of many different children. And so that stability is something that students depend on. This year, I have a student in my class, and he would not say good morning to me when he came in. He was respectful. He did his work. He at times did not want to come to school. So, of course, I reached out to his family, and I've got some ideas of things that I could do to get to know him better, to get to him. And through that, cracked his hard shell, and he, with confidence, asked me one day, "Are you going to retire after this year?" Because in my community, everybody knows that I can. And I told him that is not my plan. I'm not going to retire. And he said, "Okay, good, because if you did, you would be the third teacher that left after fighting me in the side straight." So they thought, and this is not a child who misbehaves or thinks, "Hey, these people are leaving because of me." He just wanted to know before he gave me a chance that I was going to be fair, that I was going to be someone that would be there next year, just to say good morning and smile and be that person that he could come to.
Crowd it's reflected miles, but crowd like smile. I do want to ask one specific question. I know that you've been trained in the science of reading, but let us train with this General Assembly appropriate hundreds of millions of dollars for so that we could try and improve the literacy instruction of all elementary school students. But at your school, you have a number of teachers who are not certified that have the training. So it's like we've invested in one thing, but we don't have a full set of trained teachers to actually provide what we've been provided as groceries, which is the literacy. Can you talk about the way that the teacher shortage interrupted that priority as a general assembly?
Yeah, so without having the qualified teachers, we know experience matters. We do have probably 20 teachers that are trained in science of reading, so a lot of that falls to experienced teachers to help teachers who don't have it. Of course, we want to get them trained in that so they will have the experience and the knowledge to teach that. But that just means more responsibility falls to more experienced teachers to help out.
Thank you, and you'll be some of the teachers. Thank you, Ms. Bowie, and especially for the work you're doing. And Caleb Tedros representing Mecklenburg County. You know, I haven't been in the Senate for too long, but never have I seen sort of a profession disrespected to this extent. You know, in a few months, I'm sure you'll know, there'll be plenty of people on the campaign trail talking about the importance of teaching, yet to see the type of budgets we pass in Carolina, you're only a teacher in North Carolina because you're passionate. That's not significant. So, thank you. And my question is more so, if there were to be a passed budget, what sort of activities would that allow for, just as Becker we don't?
Okay, so at my school, I teach at Stories Creek Elementary. We would be able to hire more teachers and support staff. Our kindergarten classes have 22 students in them right now, and we are hiring substitutes for some of our teacher assistants because of the uncertainty of knowing will we be able to pay them from day to day. And at Stories Creek, we have some separate setting classrooms. One classroom is a standard course of study and also a specialized curriculum. And this teacher has 10 students in her class. So that would be her normal caseload for writing her individual education plans, scheduling meetings, holding meetings with families, collecting data, and instructing students. She has 26 students on her caseload. And we have another separate setting class. It's the same situation. She has 8 students in her classroom, and she has 26 students on her caseload. So not only are they teaching their students, but they are taking extra time to handle the caseload of individualized lesson education plans for students that aren't in their own. So if we had the budget, we could hire folks to ease that burden. And quite frankly, it's unsustainable. I have seen them in tears this year. So this workload for them is unsustainable.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the work that you continue to do. Mother taught me 42 years. She's an elementary school teacher. And when I look at what's going on now, this is our personal about that. When I look at what's going on now, I have to commend anybody that chooses to be a teacher. Because if you choose to be a teacher, in many cases, you're taking a vow of poverty. I'm also convinced that if more teachers were men, the salary would be shot. That's the reality of what we're dealing with. But I am from Forsyth County. I'm the senator of the 32nd district. And our school district has been all over the news because we got some real problems. And then perhaps the problems in our district as it relates to finance. However, what kinds of programming is it happening not to have a budget? What is it?
In our district, I would say just the uncertainty of knowing what we can get. I'm not absolutely sure of a certain program, but I just know it's the uncertainty of having the people and the supplies. You can't make those decisions without knowing if you have the funding to make those decisions. I feel like our county, I'm sure as Forsyth would like to be too, but if had those things in forethought, not just reacting to now we have this gap, so we need something to fill this gap, so what are we going to do? We would like to plan for that before it happens.
Follow up. So is it just actual uncertainty?
That's what it feels like. It just feels like, you know, when we have subs in our building, it's uncertainty for who am I going to see in my building. It's uncertainty for the students, who's going to be there. It is. Teachers will make it happen. Without programs, teachers will make it happen. We will teach. We will be there. But we need people there. We need to have stable people there that feel valued and want to be there. Recruiting teachers is a big thing in my heart because, like I said earlier, I could retire. I'm not going to, but I know my days as a teacher are numbered. My years as a teacher are numbered. So I want to leave my profession in good hands. I want to recruit and retain highly qualified teachers.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Silman, for being here today. My name is Shabba Mohammed. I have the people of Rutherford County starting the Senate District. Ms. Silman, thank you for your dedication to our children and our future. Thanks again for being here today. I fundamentally believe that if it wasn't amazing teachers like you, people like myself and some of my colleagues would not be here today. I personally began my legal career as a children's rights advocate, and I've worked on our justice system as an attorney. I've seen firsthand the social prison pipeline being up close, and nothing accelerates that faster than the lack of investments in good quality educators in our states. I visited our public schools as a parent and legislator, and I've witnessed our teachers are literally holding up the future of North Carolina in one hand, and they're driving Uber and DoorDash with the other, after leaving the classroom every single day. And my concern is every day that we delay the state budget, we're telling teachers your work doesn't matter. But the truth is, the work of educators is the foundation of every single hope and dream for every child and individual, not just in our state, but our country and the world. So Ms. Bowman, my question for you is, as an educator, as a teacher, what message does the lack of an appropriate, well-funded budget send specifically to our teachers?
The message is loud and clear that we're not as respected and valued as we should be. That the critical role that we are playing to students and our community well-being is not valued. Teachers, like you said, do more with fewer resources and without proper compensation, morale just erodes. It also makes it harder to recruit and retain highly qualified teachers. My daughter is a teacher. She teaches Math 1 at Person High School, and while I think she's the greatest thing, this is her 4th year of teaching, and in her 4th year of teaching, she is the department head because she's been there the longest and has the most experience in her job. I mean, she's great, but so yeah, high turnover and just the lack of stability affects the classrooms.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Colleagues, I know that the quorum of the Senate doesn't usually allow us to offer applause during committee testimony, but when I was working in the schools, I didn't like applause interrupting my instruction either, but we did give people snaps. So I wonder if you would join me in just giving Person County Teacher of the Year snaps in between.
Thank you so much.
And I will pass to Senator Chu.
Thank you. When we fail to pass a state budget, we also fail our citizens and the individuals and the institutions who care for them, our caregivers. Right now, the cuts to Medicaid reimbursement rates are wreaking havoc across my district in Durham and across our entire state. They are forcing clinics to shut down, to reduce hours, to lay off staff. Patients are losing access to regular care and to their compassionate caregivers with whom they've built relationships for years. Preventative visits are being skipped and medications are going unfilled, and as we heard earlier, people are choosing between food and medication. And this does not just impact people who receive Medicaid, it impacts all of us. Because when thousands of North Carolinians lose access to their provider, they don't stop needing that care. They just end up in the emergency room. They grow sicker, they cost more to treat, and the strain gets passed on and on and on in the form of higher premiums, longer wait times, and more burnout across our incredible and already stretched thin healthcare workforce. The instability caused by this budget impasse, and I'll just be blunt, this absolute failure is rippling through every single hospital, every clinic, every provider, every rural healthcare center in our state. And the people being forced to wait or to give up their care entirely are often the ones who can least afford to do so. Today, we are honored to be joined by two people who see this crisis from all sides. Dr. Beth Campbell, who is the medical director at the Open Door Clinic at Urban Ministries in Wake County, a frontline provider serving patients regardless of their ability to pay. And April Cook, who is the CEO of the North Carolina Association of Free and Charitable Clinics, working with clinics across our state to deliver care to the uninsured and underinsured. Thank you both for being here today, and we welcome your testimony.
So good afternoon. Leader Batch and Senators, thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. My name is April Cook. I serve as the CEO of the North Carolina Association of Free and Charitable Clinics, a network serving uninsured and underinsured North Carolinians across 84 counties. In 2024, our clinics provided $260 million worth of care on a budget of $48 million. This work led to emergency room diversion savings of over $350 million. We're able to achieve this level of success through partnerships with hospitals, lab companies, and other community safety net organizations. Today, North Carolina's healthcare system is facing profound challenges driven by the state's failure to pass a full budget. Without an enacted budget, Medicaid has already undergone provider reimbursement cuts of 3 to 10%, forcing hospitals, clinics, and safety net providers to absorb reductions they simply cannot sustain. These cuts land hardest on rural hospitals and small community clinics that already operate on razor-thin margins. When reimbursement rates drop below the cost of delivering care, providers face impossible choices to reduce services, cut staff, cut programming, or close their doors. These consequences fall directly on patients, particularly children with special need therapies, individuals with disabilities, seniors in long-term care, pregnant mothers, and low-income adults. We are already seeing disruptions in care, delayed treatments, and reductions in essential services such as behavioral health, physical therapy, and specialized pediatric care. For free and charitable clinics, these pressures are especially acute. Every policy decision that reduces Medicaid access, whether through reimbursement cuts, delayed budget action, or federal ACA subsidy clauses, drives more patients to our doors. Yet the state budget stalemate also threatens the very funding that help clinics meet those rising needs. At this precise moment, when demand is increasing, resources are shrinking. The $11.2 million appropriation that we received in the last biennium was cut to $1.85 million in the current budget, which of course has not passed, so there's no guarantee that we'll receive any state funding, which gives us great concern based on the increase in demand for our services. This is not just a fiscal challenge, it's a health equity crisis. The people most affected are those with the fewest alternatives: rural residents, low-income families, communities of color, and individuals living with chronic disease. The longer the budget remains unresolved, the more damage accumulates across our workforce, our healthcare infrastructure, and the well-being of the people we serve. What we need now is stability and partnership. Individuals and families are losing coverage daily by increasing premiums that simply are not affordable. And a good example of that, in the recent article in Medical News, a therapist in Asheville that's 63 years old's premium went from $900 a month to over $2,000 a month, which was more than her mortgage.
How many?
But despite these challenges, I remain optimistic. North Carolina has a strong healthcare foundation, innovative providers, and a safety net doing their best to prepare to serve the most vulnerable. Healthcare should be viewed as a right and not a privilege. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for letting us speak about doing what that's with that. My name is Beth Campbell. I'm from the Urban Ministries of Wake County, just down the road in Raleigh. And I regret to tell you that nonprofits are feeling the strain, filling in the gaps for the NC residents who are less strained by the stalled state budget resolution process. Moreover, many of these nonprofits are supported by state-funded grants, and they are experiencing financial hardship as the budget continues to be delayed. The precarity of state and federal budgets have impacted all three service areas of Urban Ministries of Wake County. Our food pantry has suffered cuts in volume and quality of food products we can distribute to over 80 clients daily due to reductions in TFAC. Our Helen Wright Center for Women not only sees some cuts in funding to support the 60 women they house every evening, but also the decreased availability of affordable housing units to intuition and move. Our primary care clinic funding relies on private philanthropy and state grants, and is imperiled both by affordability issues for our donors, as well as the possibility of state legislative audits that may impact the use of these funds. We came out of the pandemic being able to serve 1,500 patients with enhanced funding support through 2024, and now we've had to reduce staff and services as we prepare to serve about 700 patients in anticipation of the potential loss of over $400,000 in state grant funding. Every dollar donated to our clinic returns more than $6 worth of services, which is an ROA that not many ventures can claim. Yet now we are struggling to find the first dollar to generate that ROI. Despite the expansion of Medicaid, Wake County still has an estimated 40,000 uninsured patients. Miss Dorothy is one such patient who's a self-employed elder care worker making just above the Medicaid eligible income level, but not enough to afford ACA plan even with the subsidies. She suffers from diabetes and hypertension and is only able to make ends meet by attending a free charitable clinic which provides medical and diabetes education visits, and she also receives her medications through our free pharmacy services. I fear we will see a significant increase in such patients as many of the 880,000 NC residents that are currently on ACA plans find these plans to be unaffordable and must give up their insurance. This will risk them showing up in already overburdened urban and rural emergency departments. The free and charitable clinics can help alleviate this demand, but the financial precarity caused by failure to pass the state budget will unfortunately impact the safety net for the Medicaid safety net, and thereby imperiling the health of our state's workforce. Furthermore, my daughter is a recent graduate of dental school with an interest in public health, and she works at a clinic that's subject to the 10% Medicaid reduced reimbursement. Her production-dependent compensation, despite seeing more than 30 patients a day, would be approximately $75,000. This is well below the average salary for a private sector dentist and would be a strain for any dentist who may come out of training with a six-figure educational debt. The office sees rapid turnover of dental providers due to this poor remuneration rate, and that results in fewer dental services available for Medicaid patients. We thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Please stay at the podium, as I know there are a number of questions. I think you confirmed some of our very worst fears. One of the questions that I have for you is, are you seeing more doctors or clinics refuse to accept Medicaid patients altogether?
Yep. Yes, as a member of the Wake County Medical Society and North Carolina Medical Society, that's been an active discussion amongst both of those entities. We are seeing fewer, it's not viable for fiscally for these practices to continue to take Medicaid patients. As we saw our patients roll off of our free and charitable clinic services and into Medicaid expansion, we saw delays in patients being able to get their first visit with a primary care provider. It took as long as 3 or 4 months. We were trying to retract that with the Free and Charitable Clinic Association and found a significant delay. And we continue to have to provide some services for those patients entering the Medicaid expansion because of a decrease in services.
Thank you. I hand it over to my colleague, Senator Adcock.
Thank you very much, Senator Chitlick. I want to thank you both for being here today to share your stories and perspectives. I would say as a nurse practitioner who is in family practice for 29 years, they really hit home to me. What we're hearing now echoes what we've heard throughout today's hearing, that whether it's educators, public workers, or people seeking health care, the cost of inaction is being paid by those who can least afford it. What you've described is not just a policy failure, it's a human failure. When Medicaid funding is cut, people don't just lose services. They lose access, they lose stability, and often they lose their health. So let me start by asking you this question. From your perspectives, how is this instability affecting healthcare providers and clinics in our communities?
Yeah, go ahead. I think it's definitely, we have systemically across the whole healthcare system, we've talked about having a reduced workforce. And that's impacting everyone, including insured patients. So then when you have additional constraints of the volume of providers that are actually taking Medicaid, that clearly is causing, barriers to care for patients that are on Medicaid. Additionally, subspecialists are decreasing, the ability to take it. Hospitals are taking on more of these financial burdens and trying to, then that cost gets passed along to the rest of the insured patients as well. So this isn't, again, this is a ripple effect across the entire population and those who have or have not insurance. But it also decreases the trust of the healthcare providers that are going into the field, as well as the trust of the patients in the system. It leads to decreased trust between patient and provider, as well as, trust that they're actually going to be dealt with fairly, whether they're dealing with their insurance company or they're dealing with their hospital or other care provider. And that is hard because I actually work with UNC medical students, and I try to model, how great the impact is that we can have, especially as a free and charitable clinic, all the things that we can do. This has been a really tough 6 months because with the reductions in force that we have even in our own clinic, it's hard to show them that we can have this great impact, but now we don't have the funding to actually do that. And we do so much in-kind contributions that facilitates our ability to deliver services, but that's hard to maintain with a smaller staff. And so it's hard to pass along to these young, energetic, trainees that this is the thing you need to go into. And I fear that this is going to impact our rural providers, our people wanting to go in and serve underserved populations. And that's going to really have a long down. We already have a difficulty, getting enough workforce, and now that's going to decrease the number of people going to primary care.
And just to echo that in 30 seconds, in North Carolina, there are areas, rural areas that have one primary care physician for 7,000 patients. With all of this happening with Medicaid, that workforce is being challenged even more because if you can't make a living taking Medicaid, why would you do it? So there's a lot of instability.
Thank you very much. I'll relinquish the mic to Senator Murdoch.
And thank you again, Ms. Cook and Dr. Campbell, for coming here today to join us. So what are you hearing from patients about delays in addressing medication, lab tests, and other specialty referrals?
Well, we're definitely seeing patients, having delays in being able to access access providers. Even in our free and charitable clinic environment where patients are enrolled in financial assistance programs to the hospital, I've had like some patients with like an indeterminate mass, and we can't get them an appointment for like 6 to 9 months. And we're having to just watch this patient, see whether, we can get a biopsy done. We're trying to do everything like around the physician shortage and get imaging done, but then I can't do much with an image if I can't biopsy the lesion, so.
Thank you. And I'm going to hand it off to Senator Mayfield.
Great, thank you so much. I'm Senator Mayfield. I represent Asheville and Buncombe County, and I saw that same article, and hers is just one example of many whose healthcare premiums are going up. I've got a couple of questions for you. Of course, the most important people in this whole scenario are the patients and what they are suffering. So can you tell me what options patients have if their provider stops accepting Medicaid and or just closes their doors altogether because they were a Medicaid supported practice and now they can't exist anymore?
That's a great question. And sadly, there's not a lot of resources. If you do not have access if you have Medicaid and can't find access because of workforce shortages, then your options are looking at federally qualified healthcare centers that are also getting beaten down with all of these budget cuts in many ways, including their pharmacy pricing and the monies that they get to help see the uninsured. So with the safety net, you have the FQHCs, rural health centers, community health centers, and then the free and charitable clinics who we focus only on the uninsured. And those folks are 139% to 250% of federal poverty. And just to give you an idea what 250% of federal poverty is, it's $39,000 for one person.
Thank you. It sure sounds like a lot, but it's not. And second only to the patients, of course, are the providers and the people who work in all of those organizations that you just mentioned. We spend an extraordinary amount of time in this building talking about the healthcare workforce, trying to increase the pipeline of new healthcare workers, trying to, provide license reciprocity to expand care, allowing pharmacists to do more things. We spend a lot of time trying to increase access to care and increase the types of people who can provide care. In your opinion, does our failure to have a state budget advance those goals or take us in the other direction?
Wow, that's pretty. You want to start with that?
Yeah, I think it definitely stands in the way of being able to enhance the workforce that's necessary to take care of our aging population, which we know has significantly higher health demands, as well as, being able to, the schools right here. This is the pipeline for, the people who become physicians. And then, the restricted budgets, which is mostly Medicare funded for residency positions, those are being impacted in terms of not like we're graduating more medical students than we have places for residencies in this country, as well as in North Carolina. I know that UNC and Wake Forest and all the medical schools have been, increasing their classes. And so, but the residency spots are not being increased in that proportion. I think the residency increased by like 100 slots across the entire country over the last year. When we're increasing our medical classes by like 30 to 40 at a time. So we're trying to push out, but then we have Medicaid restrictions on, and not a lot of hospitals willing to take on medical providers in residency programs. And we desperately need rural residency programs because those are instrumental in keeping residents that are motivated to serve that population. About 50% of those people will stay in that community. And that's a really key thing. And if we don't have a budget to fund some of those spots and for loan repayment for people who are coming out with considerable debt, because many of the students are actually going through medical school, taking 2 years out to get clinical experience. So they're carrying their undergraduate debt through that 2 years, and then they have a restriction on how much money they can loan from the government for their graduate education. We do have the UNC program that's a 3-year primary care program that's been changed recently, so that helps a little bit with that financial burden, but it's still putting a large burden on those trainees. And then they, of course, are looking at their debt, and being in a primary care or even Medicaid practice or rural practice is not sustainable for them. So only about 20% of people who enter out of 50, well, about 20% of the people enter a primary care residency program are staying in a primary care job.
And just a quick tag on that, we talk a lot about healthcare, but dental is also part of healthcare. And we, dentists in North Carolina, it's almost easier to find a unicorn because there are so few, and so few are willing to take Medicaid. Only 45% of the dentists in North Carolina will take Medicaid. And so that is a critical part of our infrastructure, not having the workforce needed.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'll turn it back over to Senator Chitley.
I just want to thank you so much for your testimony and for highlighting the cost of inaction, which immediately and over time will be so much greater than the cost of actually funding these services through a real state budget. So thank you so much for showing up. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Senator Grafstein.
If you guys could hold on one second, I think Senator Murdoch has a follow-up question. My apologies. And then Senator Adcock will be recognized after Senator Murdoch. You guys thought you were done, but do worse and we'll be like, have a seat. But we've got a lot of questions.
Yes, thank you so much. And you kind of touched on some of it as you talked about how difficult it is to get dentists. But overall, how is this impacting your staff, your clinic's ability to retain healthcare workers? As you know, we just don't have enough. Someone also mentioned our aging population, especially out west, as Senator Mayfield knows all too well, with people aging in place. So how is not having a budget making it more difficult for you to even retain the staff you already have and attract new workers?
It's a huge issue because in the nonprofit world, we are sustained by funders, state programs, and individual donors. So if there is a shortage of funding, which is a great need right now, because the nonprofit sector is being hit so hard, not just healthcare, but across from housing, et cetera, education, dollars are becoming thinner and thinner. And so our providers, they have families too that they're trying to feed. And as we try to scale back to match the budget that we're dealing with, we are going to lose people. We're going to have to cut programs as well. And that's the saddest part, because over the last 5 or 6 years, free and charitable clinics have grown to provide dental, behavioral health, pharmacy programs, and medical. And so as the budget continues to go in the direction it's going, those programs will be cut, and then folks will also lose their positions.
Yeah, one follow-on is that the people that go into nonprofit work, are, very, very motivated, and it's a moral injury to not be able to provide the services that they'd hope to provide for the community, because they can see the impact that we have, and they just, it gets demoralizing for them.
I think I'm going to ask the last healthcare question. I was so taken away earlier that I neglected to identify myself. I'm Senator Adcock from Wake County. I want to put a point on what you said earlier. It's not just primary care, as bad as that is. It's the impact on dental care, behavioral health, all kinds of therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, home health care, so people can stay in their homes, and medications, of course. I think it's tempting to want to look at this as what's happening right now, and I'd like y'all to talk a little bit about the long-term impacts as you see them, and the long-term risks of not passing a full budget as soon as we can?
Well, initially, the long-term impact is poor health outcomes. And when you're looking at North Carolina and you want a strong economy, you have to have a strong workforce. And if you don't have access to health care, a lot of people with chronic disease are just going to get sicker.
Yeah, I also fear what happens to small businesses, especially in rural communities, as they're having to face, a lot of them use ACA plans for their employees. And as they face the rising costs, that could bankrupt small businesses in rural communities that might be the only provider of certain, goods and services in that community. And it sort of leads to more corporatization and more obstacles and less employment opportunities for people in those communities if they can't help provide a job, and we're talking about people fleeing from rural communities because there aren't the available jobs that, would provide healthcare for them. So.
Thank y'all so much.
As a quick footnote, I don't think I can sit down without saying this one thing. There's been a lot of talk about work requirements with Medicaid folks. And on paper, a lot of things look good on paper. I think we all can agree. We can tell you our patient population, they not only work one job, most of them work two. But I would ask you to look at Georgia as an example that put those into place. They spent $54 million just on administrative costs to implement a work requirement program. And the benefits that were given out were half of that at $24 million. So sometimes when things look good on paper, they're not necessarily what is best for the economy.
Yeah, we have the broadband issues, and we have people that are not able to access the tools that they would need to recertify their employment. And we have people getting we have people coming to our office proving their income, and they're bringing pay stubs. And there's not always a good way to, we have to even build the system to be able to do the work requirements. And there's so many obstacles, and then those people actually become Medicaid ineligible, even though they're Medicaid eligible by income. So it's a big problem.
Thank you. I am Lisa Grafstein. I serve in the Senate from here in Wake County as well. Really taking off of where Senator Adcock left off, thanking the folks who've come before. Obviously, healthcare is a big topic. Now I want to turn us to an aspect of healthcare that's often overlooked, that's often misunderstood, and that's chronically underfunded. And we put it under the category of behavioral and mental health, but we're talking about the broad category of things like not just mental health, but folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities, TBI, substance use disorders, folks who are part of the healthcare system, but as I said, often overlooked. As a disability rights advocate, as a legislator, as a mom of a son with autism, I want to be really clear that this is an issue that affects a significant number of people in our state. And there's a saying that either, there's two groups of people, those with disabilities and those who don't yet have a disability, right? We're all going to be in need of care at some point. So this is a central issue when it comes to public health, family stability, economic justice. And right now, North Carolina is falling behind. Even before the budget stalemate, our behavioral health system was under strain, to say the least. Too few providers, too many families waiting for months or years or decades in some cases for help. And now because of critical funding that has stalled, families are being pushed into crisis. In the wealthiest country in the history of this planet, and in a state that has been growing in prosperity and prides itself on that growth, we are refusing to ensure that people have the tools to live their lives to their potential and to support their loved ones in doing so. Beyond the incalculable human cost, we will pay more in the long run because of the failure to meet the needs and invest in the people of this state. Thousands of people are on waiting lists for services. That means families are not getting the support that they need. It means families are making impossible decisions about leaving careers to provide care or turning to subpar care. Those who have access to services and supports, for example, those with innovations waiver services, or those caring for adults with complex needs, they're facing unpredictable service interruptions, indefinite waiting lists, and in too many cases, no care at all. This is on top of the long-standing struggle that many have faced to find providers. And the truth is, when budgets are tight or delayed, behavioral health is one of the first things to be cut, even as the need grows. That means fewer treatment options, longer delays for youth and adult services, and caregivers left scrambling to patch together care from a system that was already fragile. The lack of a budget is an affront to the human dignity of each and every person with a disability in the state. Today, you're going to hear from several folks who live this reality every day. We've got, and you all can come up and give your presentations in whatever order you choose. We have Sloan Meek, who's here with Wendy Lincecum, a caregiver who is providing services and has been helping navigate a maze of under-resourced supports and services. We also have Jenny Hobbs, who's the mother of 2 children with significant developmental needs. We also have Kim Feller, who is a mother of sons with autism, including my son's friend Nick from back in his Camp Royal days. So I want to thank you all for being here, and we appreciate you all coming here to tell your stories today.
And if you guys could just identify yourself when you start speaking so that the public knows who you are. Thank you.
Can you tell me your name? Home. Dashboard. Name.
Hi. My name is Sloan Meek. I live in Durham, North Carolina. Thank you for letting me speak to you today. General Assembly.
Home. Dash. Name. Medicaid.
I would like to talk about Medicaid, because the Medicaid rate reductions will greatly impact me and my friends. My whole life is supported by Medicaid. I was able to get ready and get here today because of Medicaid. The wheelchair I use, and the computer I am speaking with is because of Medicaid. I have cerebral palsy, cortical blindness, and epilepsy. Even though I need a lot of help and support every day, I am able to live a very full and rich life in the home and community of my choice because of Medicaid. I give a lot back to my community. As a good friend and neighbor. As a proud Durham citizen. A musician. As a community worship leader. As a disability rights activist. And as a public speaker. This year, I have been doing a lot of speaking and interviews about how the federal cuts to Medicaid and the state rate reductions will impact me.
Home. Dashboard. Name. Medicaid. Impact.
Reducing the Medicaid rates will make it harder to see my doctors when I need to see them. It will be harder to get medications I need. There are 3 friends who support me in my home and community through the Medicaid waiver. Even though they do not get paid a whole lot, they are committed to helping me, because they know and believe that my life is valuable, important, and worth supporting.
Home. Dashboard. Name. Medicaid. Impact. Please.
I feel a lot of fear and worry right now that every cut and rate reduction to Medicaid will change my whole life. Having disabilities does not mean I am sick. But it does mean I need consistent treatment and care to stay healthy. I do not want to become sick. I do not want to lose my community. I do not want to lose my voice. I do not want to be forced out of my home to live and receive care from a bunch of strangers. I do not want to die because of a political issue. These are the fears I share with every disabled person using Medicaid in North Carolina right now. I would like to ask every legislator in this room to please see us as having valuable and important lives that are worth supporting. Please sign a budget that fully funds Medicaid. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wendy Lincecum. I've been friends with and a caregiver for Sloan for 31 years, since he was 6 years old. He has lived with me for the past 18 years. I am paid for his care through his Medicaid waiver. Because of the level of care he needs, I am unable to hold another job. We have two friends who help Sloan with his community activities to give me a few hours of break from his care each day. One of our friends is right there. Cutting the Medicaid reimbursement rates puts our whole support system for Sloan at risk. The agency we work through is at risk of closing. Sloan and I are at risk of losing our support team, and we will likely not be able to find or hire any others. This means I will be the only one left to support Sloan every single day. We have experienced long lapses in services before, and it was very, very hard on both of us. It is difficult to find people to even interview, and it is even harder to find the right qualified people who we can trust and depend on to be able to perform all the vital things Sloan needs. I have been notified by my agency that my pay will decrease starting January 1st because of the 3% cuts to Medicaid reimbursements. As a full-time caregiver responsible for meeting all of Sloan's needs, I'm already using some of my own income to cover the costs for things he needs. Our rent and costs for medical supplies and medications not covered by his Medicaid are $400 more each month than what they were 5 years ago. That does not include increased food costs or the annual increase in cost for my own health insurance. As prices continue to rise, as my pay rate continues to decrease, I am very worried that I will not be able to afford to take care of Sloan anymore. Important work I have committed my life to do for him. Without a fully funded Medicaid system, it creates an unsustainable and heartbreaking situation for every caregiver in North Carolina and puts the people we care for at unnecessary risk for abuse, neglect, illness, and death. Please help avoid these tragedies for the people of North Carolina by voting to fully fund Medicaid. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And next we'll hear from Jenny Hobbs, who is a hero in the disability community, and I'll let her speak for herself.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Jenny Hobbs from Winston-Salem. I come to you today not just as the mom of Melanie, Michael, Meredith, and Madison, but also as the co-founder and current board chair of Advocates for Medically Fragile Kids. All of the thousands of children and families we represent, please hear their stories through me today. Our state has not been supporting all of our families well, as evidenced by over 19,700 people waiting for an innovations waiver slot, resulting in waiting times of 12 to 15 years for services and supports, which is essentially a child's entire life. Some high medical need children may be eligible for the CAP-C program, Community Alternatives Program for Children, but qualifying for that service is a high bar. 1915I services have helped bridge the gap for some individuals while waiting for the more permanent innovation slot, but household income is considered for these services. Without the waiving of parent income, as some home and community-based services like CAP-C and Innovations allow, many children are adults before they become eligible. This misses the crucial developmental period for children, which means they will need even more support as adults. Since October 1st, the NC Medicaid provider rate cuts that were made as a result of inadequate Medicaid funding for the year have meant even lower wages for all of those caring for our kids, not just in our homes, but in their therapy clinics, pediatricians' offices, and specialty provider offices, including things like equipment and supplies. Wait times have gotten longer, and some of us have services that have been stopped altogether because it's just not possible to find willing providers, or we end up just getting less staffing. We are trying to make plans and build a life with and for all of our kids, and some of them need the extra help that Medicaid offers. Without consistent, stable, full funding of Medicaid, these plans are in jeopardy. We are doing everything we can and are committed to fighting for what our kids need at all ages and stages, but we can't do it alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. We're alternating claps and slaps. Next, we'll hear from Kim Feller. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for this opportunity to share my story. My name is Kim Feller, and I'm a mother of 2 adult sons who both have autism. Both of my sons currently receive support services via Medicaid. As a result of the Medicaid cuts, it's become harder to maintain our sons' support services because they are dependent on direct support professionals, or DSPs, as we like to call them. The need for providers to reduce their services or to leave Medicaid or go out of business makes it difficult for individuals and families to access these services. My oldest son, Nick, is 27 years old, and he still lives at home. He graduated from high school with a diploma in the occupational course of study and has worked part-time as a bagger at Harris Teeter. He utilizes supported employment services, which provide him with a job coach. And this job coach helps him communicate with his supervisor, manage his work tasks, and develop new skills. Without this job coach, he wouldn't be able to continue his work. My youngest son, James, is 24 years old, and he lives in an intermediate care facility, or what's called an ICF. It's a group home, and it's a 24-hour staffed long-term care facility, which provides the highest level of support needs, including both medical and related services to individuals with developmental disabilities. My son James is nonverbal. He has frequent seizures, and he has some challenging behaviors which require his service providers to have an abundant source of empathy, dedication, and resilience. James's quality of life depends on the abilities and skills of these direct service providers. Due to the high demands of the DSP job requirements, along with the insufficient pay and training, James's staff support is either inconsistent or it's non-existent. Rate cuts have created a high turnover for those in these DSP jobs. The inconsistency in staff creates extra stressors, which often cause James's seizures and behaviors to increase. As a result of recent budget cuts, ICF homes in particular have had their funding cut by 8 to 10%. This is unacceptable considering that these individuals require the highest level of assistance and are the most vulnerable. There are no other residential options available for my son because the only higher level of support are the state institutions, which are already at full capacity. During the last few visits to James's group home, which houses 6 residents, we found only 1 DSP staff working. The required staff ratio is one DSP to 2 residents. This lack of staff coverage can create a critical situation if one of the residents has a medical crisis requiring staff to take a resident to the ER, leaving the remaining residents with no supervision. In addition to possible medical events, there is also a high probability of a behavioral crisis if a resident acts out and the solitary staff doesn't have a fellow employee to assist. My husband and I are seniors. We have no family in this area. And we aren't able to support James's needs at home. He was at home until he was 21 years of age. And we did all that we could, but we have another son as well. Our safety was at risk. My son has aggressive behaviors. And as heartbreaking as it was, we did have to make the decision to move him into a home. We are incredibly stressed about what will happen if his current ICF home can no longer afford to continue to operate with the reduced funding and the insufficient staff. So my request is to please fund Medicaid. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fowler. Yes, thank you. I appreciate all the testimony so far, and what you all have described really underscores sort of the heartbreaking truth we've been hearing all day, that the systems we tell families to rely on and that they'll be there for them, they're breaking down under the weight of this inaction. And in the case of the services we're talking about, the inaction that's stretched over decades. I think what makes this especially cruel is that the very families who need the most support, parents of children with disabilities, people on the wait list, full-time caregivers, these are the folks who are navigating the most chaos because of this inaction. So I want to ask you all, and whoever wants to answer is fine, if you can speak a little bit more about what changes you've experienced directly because of the lack of stable funding over the last months in our disability service system.
Thanks for the question. I think first and foremost, it's lack of available providers to work in our home. So my daughters require nurse level, and actually the older one is here in town in college. But there's not been hardly anyone able to go and support her every week. And so that's putting her health at risk. And we've already had issues in the past when that has happened of her having a serious medical crisis and ending up in the hospital. So that's my biggest fear and concern, and that's, I think, where we're seeing the most immediate needs. I think longer term, I'm worried about access to especially specialty care, because so many of us have rare disease, are affected by rare disease. And so if the one person that knows how to take care of your kid, child or adult, if you can't access them, where are you going to go? So.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Now, I'm going to turn it to Senator Batch for first.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for your powerful testimony and being here today. My question is, what have you had to do to fill the gaps when public services haven't been available or have been cut during this budget impasse?
Well, for my son, because he's living in a group home, they rely on staff. And because my husband and I are, still physically able to help out, and because my son lives close enough, we've been able to be at the home when we need to be, like we will go and pick him up, take him out, but that's not our job to do that. I mean, of course, we want to see him and we visit him as often as we can. We see him once a week. But we've had to fill in ourselves sometimes, not to work at the group home, but, to maybe take our son out for a little bit if we know that they don't have enough staff at the home.
And we try to rely or, use and tap into natural supports too, like Sloan's parents, our neighborhood, our community. different programs we're involved with to tap into some natural supports. But those are very limited because his parents are both in their 70s and dealing with their own health issues. Sloan needs very specialized and support and people that need to be specially trained. And it seems unfair to ask a volunteer to go through a month long of training just so they can hang out with him and not get paid for that. So tapping into natural supports is very hard.
Yeah, and for myself and a lot of people I know, it has meant, leaving the workforce to be home and available. Because even if you have staff scheduled, they get sick, they have childcare issues, they have other reasons why they can't show up. And the unknown just became too much to try to juggle with both my husband and I working full time, so.
Well, first, I want to thank you all for being here, but I'm also very sorry that you have to be. And I just want to take another minute and thank my colleagues and the staff. I'm in my 4th term in the Senate, and this is the very first time where the people of this state have been proactively invited in to share their lived experience living in our state. And I hope that when there is a new majority, and there will be a new majority in this state, that budgets are crafted using a process like this, where we hear from the people of this state, and they come into this house because this is their house. So this question is for anyone who would like to take it. But are there programs or services that were promised but you've never received due to lack of funding?
Well, my son, who is in the group home, when he was in another group home during COVID. And a lot of this was probably due to COVID, but also funding the day program that the residents attended daily. They were not able to go to the day program. So that meant they were basically restricted to being in the house all day. I mean, sometimes staff could take them out into the community, but the day program provides them with, pre-vocational skills and different recreational activities. And so if the residents aren't able to be stimulated and properly engaged, then that's going to create issues with their health, their mental health, and behaviors can increase. So again, that may have been largely due to COVID, but also that comes about with lack of funding too.
Thank you all. Sorry, go ahead.
I think, you asked if there was something new or, anything new that we haven't been able to access. I think we just want to be able to use what's available well. Because it is there, and if we can get things staffed and supported, and it can work well. It's people we're dealing with, people that are supporting and people that are receiving, and we just need to have that funded enough for that to work.
Great. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you all coming in and speaking with us and sharing the truths of what's going on in your lives in these times. So with that, I want to, again, thank you for your time and your testimony, and then we're going to turn it over to Senator Applewhite.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm breathless right now. I'm trying to collect myself. So thank you for everyone that has testified and for everyone being here to listen. I'm Senator Val Applewhite. I also answer to Master Sergeant retired United States Air Force Applewhite, and I represent Cumberland County. It's the home of Fort Bragg, and we have a saying there that when the nation dials 911, that we answer the call. We get the call. And the question today is, who will answer the call when veterans and active duty members and their family dial 911? Certainly, this legislature, without passing a budget, is willing to answer the call. I want to turn to a group of people that we should never have to be reminded to support, and that is our veterans, our active duty service members, and their families. And our state is proud to be the home of one of the largest military populations in the country. Men and women have answered the call to serve. We've made a promise, not just to our veterans, but to their loved ones, that if they served, we would stand by them, that we would be there when they came home, that we would make sure that their families had the support that they needed. But because our state has failed to pass a budget, that promise in so many forms is in jeopardy. Unfortunately, the individual we had planned to speak this afternoon to testify couldn't make it at the last minute, but I will do that for them. I am the only woman veteran in the legislature and one of very few who have made it a career. I've served on active duty, deployed, and had children while serving, raised them in a chaotic military life, and like many military mothers, you come home after a long day of duty to have your kids say, "We had Cheetos and soda for breakfast and cake and nuggets for dinner." But, you know, that's the life of a military family. We laugh about that, but underneath the humor, the reality is that the folks in this building really don't understand how the less than 1 to 2% of Americans that serve the armed forces, how we really live, and the impact and the weight of multiple deployments and injuries and separations, missed birthdays and uncertainties. Military families endure, they serve quietly, and they don't complain. So today, I just want to give a little snapshot of the voice of people who rarely ask for anything and who absolutely deserve better than what they are receiving from this state right now. I'd like to tell you a story of, not a story, but a situation of a military family in Cumberland County. My district reached out to my office. Her daughter applied for the North Carolina Scholarship for Children of Wartime Veterans. She met every requirement. She submitted everything on time. She earned this benefit through her father's sacrifice. She had planned to attend UNC Charlotte to study biology. And like many other veteran families, they built their financial plan around this scholarship, a scholarship that has been part of North Carolina's promise for decades. But because this legislature has failed to pass a budget, she has been denied, not because she did anything wrong, but because we did. When her mother spoke to me, she said our actions were shameful, that we should all be embarrassed. And you know what? She's certainly right. I am embarrassed that this legislature has not passed a budget. To that family, this is a collective failure, and they are absolutely justified in seeing it that way. There are many other children just like her, all of them eligible, all of them waiting, all of them watching a legislature that claims to be military friendly while withholding the very funding that their futures depend on. And I want to reiterate on the issue of healthcare and autism that we've just spoken about. I visited an autism organization in Fayetteville, and they told me how a large portion of their clients are of active duty military members because Fort Bragg is now the primary assignment of choice if you have a special needs child. The providers told me something that should be troubling to everyone. TRICARE, which is the military health care, does not fully fund autism therapy. It only covers a part, and Medicaid fills the gap. Without Medicaid rebates, which has not been fully funded, providers cannot keep up. They cannot hire enough therapists. They cannot maintain therapy hours, and many have to turn families away. And while all families raising autistic children face immense challenges, military families face challenges that perhaps others do not. When a service member deploys, their spouse is left completely alone. There are no grandparents nearby, no cousins to help, no extended family network. And now, because of our inaction, they may lose services that help their children thrive. Military families live with high stress, long separations, financial strain, and constant moves. These pressures contribute to higher rates of divorce. They contribute to higher rates of suicide, with veterans dying by suicide 57% higher than rates of non-veterans. When we fail to fund education and healthcare, we add more pressures onto families who are already carrying more than their final burden. My final point and the challenge to this legislature is that military families and veterans have gone places and done things that we only read about. And they do it with the hope that when they come home, their state will help keep its promises. But today, North Carolina is not keeping those promises. So let me be clear. I don't think any member of this legislature who is not willing to pass a budget today has the right to tell any military member or veteran, thank you for your service. The way you thank them for their service is to pass. Thank you. The way to really thank them for their service is to pass the budget. Thank you so much, and I yield back to you, Leader Batch.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator Applewhite. Now, Senator Everett will begin.
Thank you. I'm Senator Terrence Everett, representing Wake and Granville counties. As we near the close of this hearing, we turn our attention to a part of North Carolina that too often gets overlooked in the budget process. But without it, our state doesn't function. North Carolina is the second most rural state in the country. From the fields that put food on our tables to the small towns that keep our communities grounded, rural North Carolina matters. And our farmers, families, and small business owners deserve more than just words. They deserve real support and real investment. But instead, the budget impasse has left them behind. Rural infrastructure projects, including broadband expansion and water systems, are on hold. Farm grants, ag education programs, and cooperative extension services are being delayed or cut altogether. And when the state stalls, rural communities feel it first because the margins there are already so thin. These folks are resilient, but resilience shouldn't be a requirement. We are grateful to be joined today by Eric Henry, a small farmer, business owner, and longtime advocate for sustainable agriculture and local economies. He's here to help us understand how the failure to pass a state budget is jeopardizing the future of our farms, our towns, and the people who call them home. Mr. Henry, thank you for being here. We welcome your testimony.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. This is my second trip to Raleigh this week. I was here on Monday over at the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. Our cotton farmers are in crisis right now. Probably looking at this year alone, almost $80 million loss. The third year in a row our cotton farmers are underwater. Again, I'm Eric Henry, President of TS Designs. I've had the opportunity to live in this state for 65 years. I've also had the opportunity to be president of TS Designs for over 45 years. TS Designs is a business that I like to say works at the intersection of agriculture and apparel in North Carolina. We buy cotton from North Carolina cotton farmers, and we make apparel in this country and in this state. We're under attack. In my 45 years in business, I've never seen business as hard as it is today. Literally, our business is on the ropes. With the chaos in Washington and now what's happening in North Carolina, we need to wake up. We run a business based what I call a triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. Unfortunately, both in Washington, now in Raleigh, we have substituted people and planet for power and profit. I've always looked at the government, both at federal and the state, as a partnership. We win together, we lose together. Unfortunately, we have a big disconnect now. They don't know what's happening. And it is a crisis that I've never seen before. And unfortunately, I seem to come to Raleigh a lot on the minority side of things. Getting the state budget passed is important. It gets us to first base. But the hypocrisy of this legislation to still have a $7.25 minimum wage, and then cutbacks from the federal government with health insurance benefits and food benefits. I've got employees at TS Designs that depend on the affordable health care system. I've got employees at TS Designs now that are in panic mode because they're seeing what the rates are going up. And they're looking at me as an employer, and I'm just trying to keep the lights on. Again, it's a disconnect that we have. Back on the ag side, again, TS Designs is in apparel manufacturing. I live on a small farm in Snow Camp, Southern Alamance County. I'm part of an organization called Piedmont Agrarian Collaborative. We support the local farmers in our community. We're very dependent on the Department of Agriculture in North Carolina for our local cooperative extension agents. We see firsthand the cutbacks that are happening at that level. We see firsthand what happens when budgets don't get passed and they can't do their job. We succeed together or we fail together. And it's just a challenging time in our state that nobody's listening. And so again, I wish you'd come to North Burlington, come see what we're doing there. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today to share these concerns, and now I'll take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. I have an initial question. You spoke broadly about the budget impasse, but can you tell us more about, how this impasse is going to affect not just your business, your neighbor's business, not just this year, but this year and next year, like the specific direct impacts of not having a budget here?
Oh my gosh, it goes federal and state, but there's a lot of, when I was called grant funding. Grant funding is something that's just not a handout for us. I look as a partnership. We're stepping up to a grant and we do the work and have our partnership with either federal or state. And pretty much because without a budget, that's on hold. I'm very involved too with the county and city politics. I helped start the first cooperative-owned brewery in downtown Burlington called Burlington Beer Works. And I was just talking to our new mayor and our new city council that's getting ready to be, sworn in December. And they have to do their budgets. But how are they going to do their budgets? They don't know what's coming from the state. So, I mean, these people are starting their job and they're already not being able to do their job. So, my job and my connections is connected across the state, and the state government is very important. Again, having a relationship with the Department of Agriculture and then seeing their hands tied because of the budget. We see what's happening in Western North Carolina. We still got a lot of work to do up there. We got to hold up in the feds, but we also got to hold up because don't have a state budget. So it's all interconnected on so many levels. And it's just the hypocrisy of just not having a budget and understanding the impact that not having a budget has is just mind-blowing. And it just gets worse every day, as we've heard today.
Thank you. I'd like to yield time over to Senator Murdoch.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Henry. And have tons of family in Alamance County. So glad to see you here on today. My first question, you alluded to the lack of federal and state funding that we have right now, since at the federal and the state level, we're not fully funding government. We know ag programs are very subsidized and taking a big hit. What are some of those state programs and grants that just haven't come through for you, programs that you really depend on that you haven't been able to depend on this year?
Oh gosh, so many. I have a neighbor, Tiffany Jackson, that runs a local food distribution, and realizing the challenge she's having because of the breakdown in SNAP, and then helping her reach out to other people in our community to see if we can bring that other food in. My wife, I was trying to get her earlier because I don't know, this might be a state-funded job or federal, so I don't want to misspeak, but she spent 35 years in public education working with children with learning disabilities. She retired from that, and now she works for the facility, and again, I don't know if it's state or federal, and she's been doing this for 10 years, and she does it for the love and the passion. I can tell you it's not for the money. So in all this chaos, she just got a 5% pay cut. Now, we'll be okay with that, but what is the message you're sending when you do that to somebody that's out there providing a service to our community and says, you know, we're going to cut your pay 5%? So, I mean, there's so, I can't, every day, you know, because it's that relationship that we have, and it's important to have that relationship at both a private sector and the public sector and the government sector. But again, that system has completely broken down.
Okay, no, thank you. Sorry that you all are struggling through this, because not only can we not eat without farmers, they help to clothe us, as you're also sharing. And just one other question, what else can we do in this building? Folks say they care so much about rural communities. So what can they do through this budget to really stand up and show up for rural communities across the state?
Well, again, as I said earlier, I think people don't realize the crisis we have in the farming community. Not only, as you talked earlier, with the infrastructure, the roads, the schools, all that, got that. We understand that. But we need to make sure our farmers have an ability to make money. And there's a thing called commodity agriculture, where the marketplace determines the price and not the farmer. I will be in Stanley County tomorrow visiting our cotton farmer, 3,000 acres of cotton. The market says it's 65 cents a pound. NC State says your cost is 93 cents a pound. Do the math. That's why I said earlier, just this year alone, we're looking at cotton farmers. That's just the cotton farmers. And sometimes you get in this crop insurance stuff like this that doesn't protect those small vegetable farmers, the sweet potatoes and things like that. They even have less protection. So if we do not understand the importance, we talk about in our state about, you know, we're ag state and all the, you know, we looked at top line dollar. And when you're in business, you look at revenue. I got that. But what's the bottom line? We are hemorrhaging farmers and losses. And we're going to wake up one day and says, we can't grow food here anymore. And we'll be more dependent not only on other states, but other countries. We miss the importance of the farming community and the value they bring to our communities.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. I think what's become glaring with all of the testimony that we're hearing right now is just this non-specific anxiety that's essentially being caused, no matter the issue that we're talking about. And so, we come together, elect a body to lower that level of anxiety in North Carolina, whether you're dealing with healthcare, access to food, water, whatever the case is. We are hired to help lower that level of anxiety. Not only are we not doing a good job, not only are we not doing a mediocre job, we're actually inflicting even more anxiety onto the public, where every policy answer is maybe. Teacher want to raise next year? Maybe. Do you have clean access to water, food, et cetera? Maybe. And just think about what that does to each individual in North Carolina. So speaking for an industry that's predicated on season to season planning, what does having no budget do to just trying to see how much food you're going to grow next year, or even trying to plan for that?
Well, again, the farmers are very dependent on our cooperative extension offices, agents. And when you have budgets, things, simple things like soil test get held up, delayed. Now they actually charge for them. So, I mean, it's almost like I tell you, we're dying of 1,000 cuts. It's just not one thing. But the farmers are very dependent to have the agriculture system and support that they have through Department of Agriculture and NC State. And again, that just gets, and again, again, I taught our local cooperative extension. Not only they're getting slowed down by the budget cuts, or I mean, not having a state budget, they're actually having budget cuts and they can't even hire the people they need to hire. So, it's just such a disconnect of understanding that if we do, it's a win-win, lose-lose. And you're exactly right. We're losing. And as I said earlier, I mean, it just blows my mind. We're concerned about state budget, but this is the state that still allows $7.25 minimum wage. And I've been fighting that for I don't know how many years. And it's the same thing. I've sat here and talked and talked and talked. And again, nothing happens. But what's happening, $7.25. I mean, how can now you got on top of that, the healthcare issues, the child care issues, I mean, it's just, we're pushing everything to the limit. And so I keep going, says, let's, just like with the federal, let's get the budget done, but please don't stop there. We've got much, much, much more work to be done because we have lost. And again, it's just very frustrating, the disconnect of even our local government, the disconnect, get out there, see what's happening and be a partner to help fix these problems and not just keep pushing them down the road.
Thank you for your testimony. And you had mentioned earlier that you keep getting invited back by the minority party, and we will keep being here to hear from you and from our farmers. So thank you.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Mr. Henry, and thank you all the public that has come today, and most importantly, our speakers. What I will tell you is that they act like government can't be efficient, but I will let you guys know we started 10 minutes late, and we are going to end 2 minutes like on time. And so let's be real clear. It is very capable that at least some individuals in this building respect your time and also can be efficient, God forbid. What I will say in closing, and it goes to what when Mr. Henry was speaking about his remarks, is I always think about this quote that Dr. King said, and he said, "We may have all come on different ships, but we're all in the same boat now." And I find that today and every single day that we go forward without a budget, we see that North Carolinians are struggling. Not just one, not just two, but everyone. And for those individuals who happen to have a lot of money and can weather this storm, their premiums are going to go up because there are going to be more individuals that are uninsured. Everything that we do is interconnected, and it is our duty as legislators to make sure that we pass a budget. We have $34.5 billion of a revenue forecast for this biennium. We have $3.6 billion in our rainy day fund. All of the things that have been talked about today can be addressed with political will and with courage. I wish I could stay here and say that there are a lot of profiles in courage along with some of my Republican colleagues, but what we have seen is that they just have failed to act, and their inaction has hurt every single last person in North Carolina. And so I thank you all for coming and testifying and bearing witness to everything that has occurred over the last 142 days that we have failed to pass a budget. And what I would tell you and what I'm going to close with are some of the most powerful remarks that I heard today. Sloan Meek said, "I don't want to die because of politics." No North Carolinian deserves to die because they can't get health care, because they can't feed their children, because 1 million North Carolinians are still working at $7.25 per hour, which is $15,000 a year, y'all. 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. Literally 1 million North Carolinians. And so while we are a state that is very proud, extremely proud of being #1 in business, our caucus believes we should also be #1 in providing the services, the care, and the needs for every single North Carolinian to prosper. So thank you so much for being here today. That concludes our hearing. Thank you.